Praise be to Jesus. Hi everyone, Charles here with you. These are your morning Catholic news briefs for Saturday, October 6, 2018. A pro-gay Catholic bishop who has been credibly accused of sexually provocative behavior towards another man is slated to speak at a diocesan retreat for clergy and parish leaders. Retired Bishop Robert Lynch, formerly of the Diocese of St. Petersburg, Florida, will speak at a Formation Day to be held in the Archdiocese of Minneapolis-St. Paul at the end of November. The event is billed as a time of reflection for parish leaders to consider times of turmoil and division in the Church and where we find faith and hope. What is the role of parish leaders in guiding parishioners to find a durable hope during times of division and darkness? Bishop Lynch's poor track record in dealing with sexual scandal in his former diocese, plus homosexual scandal in his own life, make him a curious choice to lead a retreat that aims to address the current turmoil, division, and darkness the Church now faces, brought about primarily by the presence of Catholic clergy who have been active homosexuals. While Cardinal Reinhard Marx is in Rome after being personally invited by the Pope to attend the Youth Synod, his General Vicar, Dr. Peter Beer, has stated that the Archdiocese of Munich has homosexual priests and homosexual employees, adding that they render an important and good service. Dr. Beer gave an interview that has now been published by the website on the Archdiocese of Munich. On October 1st, the German Bishop's News website, Katholisch.de, reported on the Beer interview, which especially addresses the problems of clerical sexual abuse. We have homosexual priests and homosexual employees, and these persons with homosexual inclinations, and in parentheses it says, and acts, question mark, because that's a big difference there, render an important and good service and are an important part of the community of service in which we together work for and in the context of the mission of Jesus, he said. Well, that really isn't important, If a person, one of these people he's talking about, has gone to a priest and the priest okays them to work for a parish or a diocese because they're working at, struggling with their sin. They go to confession. They're no different than you or I, really. But if they just put all that aside and believe that Jesus accepts their active homosexuality, then that's really something else. So, it doesn't say here, so we'll just move on to the next story then. Okay, so now there are 3 articles from different places, and they all have to do with EWTN and Raymond Arroyo interviewing Cardinal Mueller. So we'll just read these to you. The Vatican's former doctrinal chief told EWTN last night that the abuse crisis was largely caused by a absolutely false politics within the Church that allowed abusive clergy to remain in active ministry instead of facing the canonical penalties they deserved. Cardinal Gerhard Mueller, 71, formerly the head of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, agreed with Raymond Arroyo, host of EWTN's The World Over, when the host stated that a misplaced idea of mercy, sparing these priests or bishops the penalties they deserve, really is the cause of the abuse crisis. Have these people convinced the priests that they are fighting their sinful tendencies? Or are they allowed to practice their passions and be involved in church ministries? This goes back to the 60s and 70s, Mueller explained. There was an attitude that Jesus preached love and we don't need laws in the church. But this is stupid because we are a communion of men, he continued. Love comes from God, but we can become sinners or we can do crimes, and therefore the church needs this system of penalties against its members, especially against the clergy. We must return to the old system, Mueller said. It was better. The old law and the canon law must be reestablished for overcoming this crisis. The cardinal had told Arroyo that as head of the CTF, whose job it was to adjudicate clerical abuse cases, he was opposed by influential sources in the Vatican in his determination to dismiss abusers from the clerical state. So, obviously this problem's been around for a long time. All right, so here's another article. Same, pretty much, related topic. Cardinal Gerhard Mueller, the Vatican's former doctrinal chief, told EWTN's Raymond Arroyo that both Pope Francis and the Synod cannot change the doctrine of the Church. Cardinal Mueller, the former head of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, told Arroyo on the World Over last night that Pope Francis's friends may have a strange idea that the doctrine of the Church is too hard, but that neither they nor the Pope can do anything to change it. The Pope is not the boss of the Church, Mueller said. The Pope cannot do whatever he wants. Mueller and Arroyo have been discussing the recent synods, which the TV host likened to mini Vatican IIs. The Cardinal conceded that there was a movement to change doctrine behind the synods, but that it was impossible for a synod or a pope to do that. A synod of the bishops is not an ecumenical council, Mueller said. It has no authority. Even if the pope is speaking about authority, it is not a magisterial authority. The pope cannot change the basic constitution of the church. He cannot give a new definition of the primacy of the Bishop of Rome or what bishops are to do. Mueller concedes that there is a movement to change the doctrine of the Church lying behind recent synods, but that radical change is impossible. Well, it's impossible in the sense that you can't do it officially, but Pope Francis has already showed us that in the practical sense of communion for the remarried, this is something that happens. The Pope isn't, he knows he can't change official teaching or dogma or anything, but along with the help of those who think like him, bishops, cardinal, priests, practically speaking, he can, that's how he's changing the church, really. He's not changing it in a way where dogma, where it's really obvious, we're changing our dogma or whatever. But he's changing how, he just leaves all that alone. So, and he does what he wants. He has I don't believe the Pope has any respect for the tradition or the deposit of faith. He wants his own religion, and that's, it's unbelievable, but he's getting away with it. It's just amazing. It's just mind-boggling is really what it is. Well, here's another related article. Cardinal Gerhard Mueller, the former prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, has urged Pope Francis to look for reconciliation with his critic, Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano, speaking to EWTN's The World Over program. The German cardinal called on the Pope to give answers to his accusations or questions, saying, "The people of God have a right to know what happened." Archbishop Vigano, the former U.S. nuncio, has accused Pope Francis of ignoring sanctions imposed on ex-Cardinal Theodore McCarrick by Benedict XVI. And okay, we're done with that there. One of Pope Francis's top advisors warned Friday that the Catholic Church risks increased police and government intervention if it doesn't address the clergy sex abuse scandal with system-wide reforms about the way power and sexuality are expressed. German Cardinal Reinhard Marx told a conference on child protection that the Church's weak excuses to dismiss, minimize, or cover up the rape and molestation of children were no longer acceptable to the faithful. As if they ever were, right? So, some of what he says here is amazing. He said anyone who makes such excuses is actually complicit in the crime of their perpetrator. Marx welcomed public pressure to force reforms and said the Church must have a frank discussion about abuse of power among its leaders in homosexuality, celibacy, and training for priests, among other issues. I'm sure he's going to get all this other stuff, plugged in there. If it wants to emerge from the crisis and regain its lost credibility. If no corrective action is taken by the Church, and we are working on it, we must work on it. The state has no other choice but to intervene. Marx said, referring to increased civil law enforcement investigation of church leaders in places like Chile, the United States, and elsewhere. Well, this kind of reminds me of, being caught with your pants down, to say these kinds of things at this point in time. Now, here's something else from a related article. The Church has to adopt fundamental systematic change, which I'm going to talk to this point. I think this is so wrong. The Church has to adopt fundamental systematic change to restore its credibility, Munich Cardinal Reinhard Marx said in a talk at the Roman Gregorian University October 5th. Marx wished for agents of change. He expressed his gratitude for the public pressure producing the abuse hysteria and personally accused the Church of having covered up for far too long. As if in any kind of cover-up is, we've covered up for too long. I don't know, this is amazing here. We've covered up for far too long. All right, well, see, his thinking is very, a lot of people have this kind of thinking, that the way to correct something is that you need change. In other words, you need something new. You have to implement something new. See, because the old stuff didn't work, all right? So what they do is, I think there's an article coming up that I'm going to read where this bishop points to, no, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but he says this is the problem, all right? And it really, what he's pointing to isn't really the problem, all right? What he's pointing at is a result, all right? So, what happens is, you have a problem develops and then there are results of the problem, and people tend to point at the result as if it's the fundamental problem, and it's really not, you see? So, while the Church thinks that what we need to do is to we need to do this and we need to do that and you do that, I think a lot of very intelligent people would tell you, like theologians, philosophers, church historians, people even in secular, like the secular part of history, that what needs to be done is for the Church to go backwards. Moving forward is actually going back to the time when all these things were non-existent, or pretty much. I mean, there'll always be a little bit of this, but all right. So if you go back to the 1950s, when 75% of Catholics went to Mass, and a lot of good things were happening. The tabernacle was, out where you could see it, not in some back room. We used to go to Mass on holy days of obligation, even if it was during the week. We didn't eat meat on Friday. They've gotten rid of, they've changed so much, all right? But if you go back to where things were working well, the fundamental part of all that was that there were holy priests. Not everyone, but there are way, 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 way more holy priests than there are today. And, this is really what the church is built on, is its priesthood. And when your priests start getting worldly, this is what's going on, then you start having all kinds of problems, and people start pointing at all these results, the child, we have to do this about that. No, that's not the way things are, things have to be corrected at their root. But, there aren't the forces in the church, there aren't the people with the guts to try, they may be speaking up about what's going on right now, but I haven't heard anybody talk about, moving the church back to where it was before all this happened. So it's probably, I don't think it's ever going to happen, but I just wanted to point out, all these people who talk about all this change, and you change this, and, you change that, and this will change that. The same problem exists in technology. We overfish the oceans, let's say. We're running out of fish, so what do? We start fish farms. There's too many people in the world, yada, yada, yada. They're always coming up with something to fix something else that they've created. And, of course, this is very cool because what this does is it makes money. See, it's all based on money. Every time, there's new fashions, people go right out and buy them, new cars, See, this constant change continually just, keeps the money machine going. And, this is what people want. People don't really care about a simple way of life. They lead these terribly complex lives. What goes on in the world just makes me cringe. It really does. I'm so glad I'm a hermit. I've really been out of the world for a long time. I just, when I go outside and see people walking down the street, not even watching where they're going, staring at these phones, or I go downtown to confession, let's say at 8 o'clock in the morning, and the buses are packed with people going to work, and it's like, 99 out of 100 of them are like doing something on one of these phones. I don't have one of these. I work on a desktop. I don't need a phone or laptops or any of that. I do fine with what I'm doing. All right, let's move on here. Bishop Frank Cagliano of Bridgeport said Thursday that the church must discuss its sexual abuse crisis if it's to gain the trust of young people. During his October 4th speech at the 2018 Synod of Bishops, Cagliano said that the church must continue to directly address the issue of the sexual abuse of minors and youth by clerics in many regions of the world. It is both a crime and a sin that has undermined the confidence and trust that young people must have in the church as leaders and the church as an institution, so that they may again trust their priests and bishops to exercise true spiritual fatherhood, serve as adult figures in their lives, and as authentic mentors of faith. So, I read some of these kinds of statements from bishops and stuff, and, as far as I'm concerned, they're all, what they really think, what they really see as the problem, addressing this, addressing that. I think they're all off the mark, I wish someone would say, we need holy priests. We need to, make sure that our seminaries are full of good holy priests that teach our seminarians. Cardinal Kupich was at Mundelein, which is a formation school for seminarians. And the seminarians were just astounded at some of the things he said. I made a post about that. It was just astounding. I wouldn't be surprised if, after the talk they went back and packed up their bags and went home and, said, "Mom, no, I'm in the wrong place there." It's just really, we really need holy priests. Papal competent Jesuit Father Antonio Spadaro justified withholding specifics about discussions at the Vatican's Youth Synod from journalists and others, saying reports of interventions making it outside the Synod Hall squelches discernment and freedom of spirit. The Youth Synod is not a place for debate, Spadaro told reporters covering the Synod Friday. Rather, it should be a spiritual place, not a plate of debate and opinion. See, there are, people, this guy here, I should be, Father Spadaro and all these modernists, they just really, they've truly got all the doors and windows covered. And I don't mean only in this synod. I just, they have all the bases, covered. They have a game plan. And you say, well, how could you know they have a game plan? Well, the way this is playing out, the church has been basically hijacked by modernists. They block. They block whoever they want to block, and they squelch whoever they want to squelch. It's absolutely amazing. And I think all we have to look forward to is absolutely nothing other than more of the same, and eventually there'll be a schism in the church. I can't imagine that, Jesus is going to let this go on. Because this is truly like some other church, this isn't even, what does this have to do with Catholicism? I think they've moved far away enough from Catholicism to where it's not, their beliefs are really different. They're just looking for ways to get around. They're trying to hijack souls is what I believe is really what they're trying to do, to get them to believe in some other kind of religion. I have my own belief about what that is, but, it's certainly not Catholicism, who's ever heard of a pope doing the kinds of things, Who's ever heard of the church, people just don't know what to do about this, you see. This isn't covered on page so-and-so. All right, well, boy, that was a long thing. I think that's about it for this update here. And St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle, is coming right up. All right, bye.